Hi, friends. There I am. Hi, friends. Welcome back. I saw some people already checking in. Thank you, Virginia. I hope you do stay safe in that storm. Beverly and Danny, the first ones out the gate today. Um, yeah, welcome back to Pink and Main's YouTube or Facebook page, wherever you are watching from. My name is Caitlin of Caitlin Annalie Cards. And today we're going to do something a little different, something we haven't done in a little bit while we've been hanging out. We are going to do some watercoloring. And if you have been here before, you know it is not my strong suit. So if I can pull this one off, anybody can pull it off. Oh my goodness, look at all those people. I see Susan, Anita, Leslie, Annette, Heather's here, Peggy, Linda. Thank you all so much for checking in. I know there's storms all over, so hopefully everybody keeps power long enough today to hang out. This one shouldn't be too long. Per my usual, I didn't test it out first, but I have a pretty good vision tonight, I think. And before we jump in, I want to quickly show you, for anybody who didn't catch my blog post yesterday with Pink and Maine, how the other card turned out that we started on Tuesday. So here we go. All right, so this is the card that we made together on Tuesday. I have to be honest with you, I don't particularly like it, but that's okay because I love this one. So this is the card that we made with the positive of our foil. See if we can get that shine. There we go. And with the other little cup that we colored in together from the Thanks a Latte stamp set. So yeah, very different vibes, very similar products. One I like more than the other. I think that's pretty normal. I just kind of wanted to level set with you guys that you don't have to love every single thing, and it doesn't mean that we didn't learn something and we didn't get to practice some cool techniques. So I'm still happy about it. Let's see, I see Loretta checking in from Cedar Rapids. Julianne's here. Mary Lou from North Carolina. My goodness. Okay, so I grabbed two Pink and Maine inks, right? We have Construction and the Park. I also grabbed some Distress inks, Crackling, Campfire, and Vintage Photo to keep up these like fall feelings. And we are bringing back the Autumn Leaves stamp set that we used a couple weeks ago. But this time I want to use it to make a wreath. And I remembered that Pink and Mean has watercolor cardstock available now. It is 140-pound cold pressed. It's so sturdy feeling. And I was like, man, we should use some of that. So that's what we're going to do. One side is definitely more textured than the other. I think we're going to use the more textured side. Let's see if I can. I don't know if you'll be able to tell. This side is very smooth and like silky, and this side has just a little bit more texture to it. My original plan was to feature a Gina K product because Michelle from Pink Domain is all about brands supporting other brands, and especially women-led brands supporting other women-led brands. But unfortunately, it looks like on Gina's page and Simon Says Stamp that the wreath builder is out of stock. So I didn't feel good sharing a product that's out of stock in case anybody who doesn't have it fell in love and then you can't get it. So I'm going to show you how I have made wreaths in the past before I knew about the wreath builder. And it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical like it would be that way. It's going to be a little more organic, but it's still going to be beautiful. And that's all I care about. Virginia, what does cold press mean? I'm pretty sure it's a process that they like make the actual paper, like when they squish it, right? They take all that paper pulp and they squish it into paper, and there's like a hot, I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's a hot press and there's a cold press. if anybody else on here, there's 25 of you at least, if anybody else knows if I'm right or not. I'm pretty sure that's right, that it has to do with how they squish. I don't exactly know what the difference means though, but this one is cold press, so at least we have that going for us. Okay, and I have a scrap of Pebble and I have a pack of Pebble cardstock, so we can do our sentiment and our background, our backer panel in that. And I have a mug. That's how we're going to make our wreath. And I have some pre-blue, because I didn't clean my brush out, light blue water that we're going to make work. So let me start out by measuring. Let's see what these panels measure. I'm sure it was on the wrapper somewhere and I just didn't see it, but let's just verify. All right, so this is 8.5. Oh, by 5.5, perfect. All right, so we're gonna just cut this down. I know I'm gonna want a pebble border. That's gonna be pretty tight. So let's do 4 by 5.25. So we're just gonna have a 1/4 inch from each side free. Oh, Danny, that's so funny. Danny is working on some water paper color too, or autumn leaves, or maybe both. Okay, so we have that, and I'm pre-cutting it, sorry, because I want to be sure that my circle is in a good spot. And literally all I'm gonna do is flip my mug upside down, shout out to Target, and I'm gonna go in with a Tombow pen, but you can use any. I want mine to be water reactive because when I start using my watercolor, I want the circle to kind of disappear. Oh, Danny's working on a wreath builder. Got it. So I want my marker to disappear. If you were doing like a double or a stylized wreath where you wanted your lines to stay put, you would not want to use a water-based marker, if that makes sense. You could probably do like a Copic multi-liner and then go in with your water paper or watercolor stuff and it would stay put. But I want mine to kind of blend a little bit. So I'm going to use a little bullet nib of this. I want it a little, sorry, my head is in the way. I want it a little higher up from the middle. And I'm just going to kind of guesstimate side to side. Sorry, you guys aren't exactly centered. Like that, I think. And I'm just going to trace this all the way around. And that's going to be the circle that we stamp around. All right, let's see what our answers are about this. So there are 3 types of watercolor paper: hot, cold, and rough. The texture depends on how they're squished, how they're compressed. Thank you so much. That's perfect. Thank you. Cool. I didn't know there were 3. I thought there were only 2. Now we know. I'm going to do this against all of my natural instincts, free stamping. Okay, we're going to free stamp these around our circle. And I'm going to go ahead and grab, I don't think any of mine are going to go off the page, but just in case, I'm going to put a little printer paper underneath to help keep things tidy. And I'm going to start with some of my bigger stamps. Hot press is the smoothest, but it takes longer to dry. You guys are just have all the knowledge. Thank you. I'm going to go in with my construction ink up that whole leaf. And I'm lining up the curve of that leaf as close as I can to the circle of my wreath. Like that, minus the dog hair. Okay, and I'm going to use the same stamp, but I'm going to stamp it in the Crackling Campfire this time. and we're going to place it kind of diagonal. So I did say we're not shooting for perfect symmetry here, but we're going to try to build a somewhat symmetrical base just because I think that's going to be the most appealing to the eye. I love watercolor too. Unfortunately, it's just not my strong suit yet. Like Danny said, yet is the key word, right? But I really appreciate all of your help. All right, so now I'm going in with this smaller leaf, and we're going to go in with the park. And I'm going to try to be mindful of what colors I want where, what's going to overlap and be pretty, and what has a better risk of overlapping to be mud. So I'm going to use the green over here with my orangey yellow, and we'll use this brown with our deeper orange so that the brown that we're making is more intentional. And the cool thing about this is there's no rules, and you can go in with as many different like leaves and things as you want. So I'm going to try to use some of the bigger images first, because then I feel like I can tuck the smaller ones around. And you also don't have to fill in the whole hoop. Like I have that little mess up there. If I should have just used a regular cup instead of a mug, it would have been easier. But that was the size I wanted. You could leave the hoop or like, again, make it thicker and more on purpose, intentional, and then do like little clusters of flowers or leaves. You don't have to have everything connect. I just really liked it. There's that leaf. And then let's bring in some more construction. And I do want these to overlap at least a little bit, because my plan is to, when we add the water, and if we need additional ink, that they'll kind of smush and blend together a little bit. So let's see, we need some more green. There. And maybe one more of this construction over there. Have these little like berries. We don't have any other brown, so maybe we'll do like some berries and some of the there's like little acorns in this set too. Do one of the acorns up here in the brown. I don't really want the stem of that, so I'm just going to wipe that off a little bit. It's still there a tiny bit, but not as dramatic. I think we'll be able to like blend that out a little bit. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about that so far. Let's do this first layer and see how this goes. I have a little bit of sticky residue on this, but I'm just gonna flip this over, and we're gonna use this as my kind of coloring mat. Hopefully this blue ink doesn't ruin everything. So I've put a little bit of water in my brush. This is one of the Pink and Main watercolor brushes. You can tell because of that perfect pink on the handle. And so when you give it a little squeeze right on this button, just the tiniest bit of water kind of drips out from through the barrel onto the brush. All right, and you can see how that just literally comes to life. I'm going to try to be mindful to not do two leaves that are touching right away so that everything kind of has time to dry down a little bit and we don't end up with complete mud. I do want some blending and overlapping, but I really want to decide when and how it's happening. It feels like that's a lot. Like I'm having to kind of wake up this ink a little bit from those edges. But I don't really want to go over those middle stems. I really want that to kind of just flow however the ink decides it wants to. This is so pretty. I'm loving this already. And you could absolutely, if you're not a fall person, you could do the same technique with flowers stamped in a circle or snowflakes stamped in a circle. You could do like little Halloween symbols, you know, little pumpkins. These are starting to almost look like pressed flowers or something. So pretty. I want to give that a minute. The other thing too is like this one, it looks really, really, really light. So I'm going to just take a little bit of that ink, that same color ink, and just kind of drop it through the middle. Kind of where I can see a little bit of that stamped image still. It didn't really happen so much with the distress ink, but I think the construction is just naturally a little bit of a lighter shade. So we can kind of just support it a little bit. And the other thing is if anything gets too like drippy, like that had a big old water splotch there, you can just kind of paper towel it up a little bit. I don't want to do too much because I don't want to take away all of that color. Oh, thanks. Have a good night. I see Juliana checking in too. Mary. All right, this one already looks like a lot of that water has soaked up. So let's, and this one wasn't super wet to begin with either. So let's go in and see if we can get some of that green moving. So pretty. And the watercolor will only move where there's water. So if you're really careful to stay in the lines of your stamped image, for the most part, you're good. Like I got a little out of the line on that orange one, but Everything else is pretty, holding its shape really well. My natural tendency is to want to dip my brush into water instead of squeezing. So without realizing it, just occurred to me that that's what I'm doing. Hmm. And the other fun thing is we can always add color in and like combine them on our own, right? So we can take some of that orange and kind of drop it in with our brown and kind of create our own blends. Just stamping the corner of my ink onto my acrylic block. Pretty. Oh yeah, Danny said she does not like the free form kind of feeling of watercolor. This is my kind of watercolor where you have a stamped image, you have a general guideline of what you're doing, and the colors can still kind of move, and I feel like you still get enough of that kind of organic watercolor feel without it being too crazy. This is the kind of watercolor I've been the most successful with by far, in my like experimenting. That. And the other thing too is you can always fake some of that organic feeling. So if I go in now and we wanted some, like a little bit of splotchy, I can take some clean water and just kind of like speckle it around and then drop in some of that color. And you can kind of like fake that feeling, right? For me, it feels a lot less overwhelming than like when you people wet their whole page. I'm like, oh my God, I could never. And it's beautiful. I'm not brave enough for that yet. But this kind of little splotches and little droplets here and there does not feel intimidating to me. I definitely don't have to either. If even this is like, no, I like just the lines, then do just the lines. I think that's good. Right, so we have a little bit of that watercolor feel. I think that's so pretty. And you could definitely do layers of this. You could let it dry and go back in with the stamp and stamp like over it. You could purposefully stamp it off a little bit, which I'm very tempted to do depending on how fast this dries. Yeah, I think it's really fun. Let's set that aside for a minute and get our sentiment and our paper ready. And if we have time, I might try stamping that off off to the side a little bit. I think that would be really cute. Okay, let's make a card, a whole card, instead of just a card panel. Get crazy today. Also, a little bit of self-promotion if I can. It was announced today officially, I will be on Craft Roulette on Black Friday, which is the day after Thanksgiving, which I guess if you're not in the US, that doesn't actually help clarify because you guys don't celebrate Thanksgiving. It's November 24th. That's the day. If you're not familiar with Craft Roulette, it's a really fun show where they spin for 4 random parameters that you then have to make a card with. And it's not educational technique-wise. It's not like a class. It just feels a lot like this sometimes, like just hanging out and talking crafts. So we'll talk about it again when it gets closer, but just so you know, it'll be my 3rd time, I believe, on, and every time I make a card I absolutely would have never made otherwise. But I think that that's fun. I think that for me, that's the point. I'm thinking autumn greetings for the sentiment. Right, I'm on like a couple weeks or a week or 2 after Kathy Zilski. I'm very excited about that. She did great last time. I'm excited to see her on there first. I'm stamping with my vintage photo. A good 3 inkings there to make sure that it's super dark and legible. And then we will. The other reason I picked this set was because of the coordinating sentiment dies, because I don't love stamping sentiments on to the bumpy side of watercolor paper. A lot of times, no matter how many layers I do, I feel like it's not crisp. It's just the natural texture of the paper. I like being able to either put my sentiment on a banner or have a coordinating die when I'm using my watercolor paper. All right. I've decided I don't care if this is fully dry or not, because if the second layer blends and smushes and bleeds, I'm really fine with it, I think. I'm going to go in with all of the same stamps. And normally this would be like when I would tell you, man, I wish I had used, maybe we'll go ground espresso. I wish I had used my Misty, because then we could reposition them more carefully, but I want them to be off center this time. Come on, inks. I'm just worried that my vintage photo needs a re-inking. So I'm worried that without being able to go over it multiple times, it's not going to be dark enough. So we're going to add in some ground espresso. So I'm going to get this pretty close, and then I'm going to just tilt it a little. It's pretty. I'm going to do the same color for all of them. With this one, again, I kind of tucked that stem. So I'm just going to wipe off the stem with my microfiber. I love that. How it's just off just a little bit. I think it's giving it kind of a, not stained glass, but kind of. I love that sketch and watercolor style in general. I've seen a lot of people with tattoos that look like that, and I love them. I already have one tattoo from a stamp. We'll see how many I end up with by the time everything's said and done, you know? I'm going to try to be more careful with this guy to make sure that I just don't even ink up the stem. That's the one nice thing about having all of these inks just in the minis, is I feel like it's easier to control where you are and aren't stamping. And if that didn't get inked, I don't even really care. And if you think that I should have stopped before, you're probably right. But, you know, the too much gene, it's pretty strong with me. So it is what it is. I have one final thing I want to do. Let's see. My little watercolor guys are right here. And I think maybe citrine's going to be a little bright. I want to add some shimmer splatter. Again, could this be too much? Maybe. Oh, Mary, well, thank you for stopping by. I hope you have a good night. I don't want that brush. I want a tiny hoop brush. I feel like I have an endless supply at this point of these really tiny, just like cheap kid craft brushes. And they're perfect for something like this, because this shimmer is just so pretty. And because my brush is really small, it's going to create a really, really tiny fine splatters. And they're not super dark. I did water this down a pretty good bit. And I'm kind of just generally going in the shape of my wreath, just like that. Put it up so you guys can see. So it just breaks it up a little bit, and once it dries, it'll have just that tiniest bit of metallic shimmer to it that I think will be really, really pretty. And our card panel will mat just like that. Although this guy's like right on the edge, and it's bothering me that this guy's not. So maybe we'll just trim a tiny bit off of like the bottom and that one side. Like literally like an eighth of an inch. Not even. Just a little sliver. I want to pop this up with foam because of course I do. And then our sentiment will just go flat in the middle there. Okay. There we go. And our little autumn greetings. And you could definitely add some pearls or gems if you wanted, but I think I've pushed my limits far enough for tonight. I think I've risked it enough with all of the extra things that I decided to add. So I think I'm gonna skip the gems. Why not? Probably because of that texture. I just did a little bit too little in the glue department. There we go. That look right? Yeah, that looks right. Let's clear block it. All right, guys, that is another project wrapped up. There we go. There's our fun watercolor stamped, a little bit different, a little bit more soft and whimsical than some of my cards can be. Not necessarily clean and simple, but a little bit more on that side of things, right? So, and I made a whole card. Look at that. The small victories, guys. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. I really did. It's good to change it up. It's good to try different things. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. I hope that everybody stays safe, and I hope that everybody is doing okay. I know a lot of the country's in a heat wave. There's like another hurricane coming, and it's something all the time. So wherever you are, I hope that you are doing well. I will be back here next week on Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Facebook with some kind of cool card. Don't know what it's going to be. So if you have any requests, product that you'd like to see, technique that you'd like to see, theme that you would like to see, definitely leave me a comment. I'll go back and check through everything this weekend from Tuesdays and today's. But yeah, otherwise, I'm so grateful that you guys came to hang out. I hope that you have a great weekend, and I will see you back here next week. And until then, happy crafting, guys.